Sister, see the line.
Yeah. Do you know how to do it? Just remove it? How did you remove it? Oh, maybe that's what I did. So what time is it right now? 7:45? Oh, 10 minutes from now. Yeah. 7:55. Cool.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Should we have you guys go? Okay, so let's talk to you guys while we're still figuring out how our line is. Yes.
I think in the video at home, I couldn't understand you. Yeah.
So let's do this.
I'm afraid that the people watching it.
That's why you came in person, you had to see it for yourselves.
No, because I really.
So just go, I guess, now.
I was watching the khutbah, Jum'ah, and I couldn't.
We're still working on all the technical matters of the sound here. Just because it's brand new, still trying to figure out exactly how the acoustics work. Alhamdulillah, I just wanted to start by saying all praises be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Peace and blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad. And we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be here together in person. It's been a long time. And I remember, before the pandemic and before all the concerns around the virus, which, were well-founded and things that we had to take seriously, I remember the crowd that used to frequent the masjid in the old location. I remember the excitement we used to have during the game nights. I remember the cool conversations we would have when we discussed, hot button topics. We didn't do that online at all. It was just in person. We decided, we learned over the pandemic that it would be useful to continue to stay live, to go live, but we also, really missed the in-person experience. And so, as I was saying during Jum'ah, I really look forward to being in person every single Friday here. For those of you who are here tonight, and for those of you who are not, or tuned in live, I just want to say that every single Friday, inshallah, you should be able to expect something going on with us. There's something happening here at 7 o'clock. And unless we specifically say, guys, whatever was supposed to be happening is postponed or canceled, you can expect there to be something here. You don't need to even check, like, is there something happening this Friday? Just assume so, right? There's nothing else, which is not, there will always be something, but, you'll be here for Maghrib, you'll be here for a small program, something simple even, and connect with some brothers and sisters, etc., and have given your day, your Friday to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the second thing I wanted to say, is that as a community, we need to revive some of the good habits that we have, right? And one of those good habits was being together in a kind of brotherhood and sisterhood, and spending time together at the masjid, especially on Friday. That was a really, really good habit. You just gave one day to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala worthy of us at least giving him 1 out of the 7 days of the week that he's given us? Yes? No? Yes or no? Yes. I would like to hear your voices. Is he worthy of that at least 1 day? Absolutely. Right? And what we don't realize is the impact that we have when we make sure that our presence is felt at the masjid. We're here, and then our neighbors or our, family members, they make note of that, and they become interested, and they come, and then, your neighbor who really likes the biryani you give them every couple of weeks, it's like, I'd like to come meet your people, but little by little, your actions start to speak so loudly, and you really need very little words to explain who you are and what you do, right? And so this presence of the masjid on a regular basis has a really positive, really critical impact for the development and the growth of the community. So I'm saying all of this because I want all of us to take this idea seriously. Every Friday, inshallah, there should be something at the masjid, and inshallah, over the next few weeks, before Ramadan, because of course Ramadan, everyone will be here every night, but before Ramadan, try your best to make it a habit to even bring somebody else with you, right? And for those who are maybe concerned about safety protocols and things like that, let them know. Come check it out and take it pretty seriously. Right? I think many of you know that we do, and many of the most cautious people are those who are involved in our safety procedures and making sure that everybody else remains safe as well. So with that said, I would like to begin tonight's topic. And let me start by just quickly asking, even those of you who are in person, if you want to just pull out your phones and go on Facebook or the Facebook app and just quickly share the feed so that those who are tuned in online or those who might tune in online can benefit as well. And I'm going to do the same here. Just give me a second to do that. You can see the ugly floor in the camera. We're going to get it fixed, inshallah. Don't worry, guys. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. I begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who his peace and blessings on Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, his family members, companions, and loved ones. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he would bless this gathering and enable us to learn something new and to benefit from the lesson for today. Today's story, brothers and sisters, is a really interesting one, but one that is actually fairly short. It is a story that comes to us in the Quran, in the way that we take it, but also a story that was at some point relevant for Bani Israel as well, particularly the Jewish community, some of whom was around the Prophet ﷺ. So I just want to start by sharing the story. Long before the time of Rasulullah, long before the time of the last revelation, before many of the prophets that we are familiar with and we are aware of, there was what seems to be a king. And this king lived somewhere it seems like he lived somewhere in the Asian continent, somewhere in Asia, maybe Central Asia. Perhaps modern day Iran, somewhere at that time it was even before it was really Persia, or known by that way. So he lived in this area, and this king was given a significant dominion. He had great means. He had great resources to his disposal. On top of that, he was given great wisdom. He was clever and diplomatic, and he really understood how to play the game of politics with wisdom in other regards as well. But perhaps more important than any of these things, this particular king was given faith, and he was given inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the greatness of this particular king, the greatness of his means, was not significant. It wasn't significant enough for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make mention of him in the Quran. There are many kings that exist in the world, right? And what percentage of kings have been referenced in the Quran? How many kings are even spoken of in the Quran? It's a small number, right? It's a very small number. And half of them are made reference not because of how great they were, but because of how horrible they were, right? And so there's something that makes this particular king special and worthy of mention. And that is his faith. That is his iman and also his character. The way his faith is put into action. And that's something that I think we all need to internalize before I even say anything else. Then. Faith, when you put it into action, becomes your character. Your convictions, when you act upon them, that's who you are as a person. That's what you're made of. And it is his faith and his character that made him worthy of mention to the point that he is mentioned in the ayat of the Quran, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to him, he gives him the name Dhul Qarnayn. Have you all heard the name Dhul Qarnayn before? Now, Dhul Qarnayn is not a name, right? It's a title. I mean, maybe it's become so famous that somebody might name their child Dhul Qarnayn, but it would be a little bit odd to name your child Dhul Qarnayn, particularly considering the meaning, the literal meaning of Dhul Qarnayn. Dhul Qarnayn means the one of two horns. Qarn is a horn, and Qarnayn is two horns. Another of the meanings is the one of two ages. Qarn is also like an age in human history, right? So the one of two ages. There are other minor meanings, like the one of two kingdoms, or the one of two realms, right? It's also one of the potential meanings. But it's his title that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him. Allah does not make mention of him by name. So one day, this is the story of this king. One day, Dhul Qarnayn decides that he will, using his means and using the resources at his disposal, that he will travel the earth and he will seek people who could benefit by his means. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, فَأَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. He traveled, but really what this means is that he followed the means. Sababa are the means, right? So he followed the means that he had, which teaches us something about the perspective of Dhul Qarnayn and the way he viewed his means, right? Some people view their means as a way to relax and take it easy and not do anything, right? They have so much money, so they just want to fill a room with money and they just want to swim around it, right? This is what some people believe their means should give them. But Dhul Qarnayn, he viewed his means in a different way. He felt that the means are a reason for him to travel and to do something with those means, to use those means. Right? So he started to travel. And so he travels to the west, and he travels far to the west until he reaches an area where he can go no further, perhaps because he comes across a large lake or a large body of water, and all he can see further is that the sun is, it sets, and he cannot see what is beyond that body of water. And when he travels this far west, there he finds people, and amongst these people, some of them are committing oppression against others, right? And the Quran doesn't go into details, but we can analyze using historical narratives. But all we know from the Quranic story, which is what's really important, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that there was this group of people, and that some of them were engaging in a kind of immoral behavior towards others. And this prompted Dhul Qarnayn to act. So, just close my notes. So Dhul Qarnayn decides that he's going to do something about this, right? He's given instructions from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's given the green light from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Go ahead and treat them however you think is appropriate to treat them, right? Treat some of them with harshness or punish some of them, and treat others of them with kindness. So he's given the green light from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so he decides to act based on that, and what does he decide? He decides that he will punish those who are involved in the oppression. And he's very swift in his punishment. And then he decides that those who are the victims of the oppression will be treated with immense kindness and care and taken care of. And those who were in the middle, that were neither involved in the oppression, perhaps nor were they oppressed, they will learn the lesson of Zulqarnain, right? So this becomes a lesson for all of the people in this land, and news spreads of the activities of Zulqarnain far and wide to other tribes. And what does he do here? He establishes a clear demonstration of what is right and what is wrong. That there are some things you cannot do, and there are some things you must do. Right? If you cannot oppress, you cannot act with injustice, and if you see others acting with injustice, you must act. So he establishes this kind of very basic right and wrong. And he establishes with that right and wrong accountability, right? Because he takes action. He takes action against those oppressed. And as such, he establishes a morality for people, a morality that they can use, and they can also continue to make their rules and laws and organize their society around, right? When he finishes his work there, he travels again. As Allah says, he continues to travel. And this time, he travels to lands far in the east. So far in the east that he cannot go further, and all he sees is that the sun rises further as far as he can see, as is mentioned in the Quran. Now there, he finds a very different kind of people, right? Here he finds people who, like I said, they're very different from the first, and they are, as described in the Quran, between them is this kind of sun that is not even a sitter, a cover. The scholars they interpret this to mean a few things. They say that this could mean that it's just the land itself is so flat and there's no trees and no mountains and nothing really to shade people. It could also mean that these are people who they construct their houses, but they construct them in such a primitive way that they don't even have roofs over their houses. And the third is that these people are so primitive and so simple that they don't even have the concept of clothing, right? So clearly these are a very different kind of people. Regardless, Dhul-Qarnayn works with them as well. There's one key phrase that tells us this in the Quran when Allah says, "Kadhalik," right? And with them as well, just like before. Kadhalik, just like before, Dhul-Qarnayn works with them as well. And so he works with them, tries to get them to understand what he's teaching and establishes for them a sense of morality, right and wrong as well. But he does it in a way that is more appropriate and applicable to them. And then he travels again. And now, when he travels for a third time, he comes to an area that is between between two mountains. Sed is like a mountain that has been carved by a river. It's like a river valley, right? So there's two mountains, and between it there's a river valley. And there, when he finds people there, he finds them to be also very different from the last two groups of people that he worked with, and very different even from any other people that he's ever met before. And the way we are explaining this in the Quran, we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that even the language is so different that they have difficulty understanding each other. Despite the difficulty, Dhul-Qarnayn is patient with the people. He spends time trying to figure out what they're saying, learn from them, learn what they're saying, and understand them. And after he understands them and can communicate with them, the first thing they start to tell him is, "We have a problem. There are these people, Ya'juj or Ma'juj, they keep invading our lands, they keep pillaging and looting, and they just destroy our homes and kill, and they just make a mess of things, and we need your help. So would you mind if we collected some of our wealth? We'll pay you. You take this wealth and you use it however you want, and you build for us a barrier," right? They ask for Senta. They ask for a barrier, another wall between them and Ya'juj or Ma'juj, so that those people cannot come. And he responds to them. And he says to them, "I don't want you to collect any funds. Instead, what I want you to do is help me with people. Give me human resources. Give me people and strength and individuals who I can work with. And empower me, allow me to work with those people. And instead of building a set, which is what you requested, a wall, we are going to build what he calls Radha, we're going to build a different kind of barrier, something that I know will work better. So see, Zulkarnain now he starts to share with them his knowledge. He could have asked his soldiers and army, okay, let's just build a wall for them to go. But instead of using his own forces to do the work, he uses the strength of the individuals of the tribe who asked for his help. And he simply instructs. So they come to him and they say, okay, what do we do first? He says, give me large sheets of iron. And then when they get that, they come back and they say, okay, what do we do now? Line them up in this way. What do we do now? Okay, create heat and melt this other metal. Right? And what do we do now? Okay, pour it in between. And so there's a set of instructions that he gives one after the other, and he stays there with these people for as long as this takes. You can imagine, weeks or months that this takes to collect all the resources and follow all the instructions one after the other, until finally this barrier has been constructed. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains in the Quran, the barrier is such that neither could the tribe that was attacking, the aggressive tribes, neither could they scale the walls, nor could they burrow through the walls or make a hole in these walls. It was such an advanced and well-designed barrier, right? At that point, remember, at the other places, what did he do? He established morality. Here, he doesn't do that, right? He finished the wall, then he starts talking to them. هَذَا رَحْمَةٌ مِّن رَبِّي. This is a mercy from my Lord. Right? He starts to talk to them about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and about morality, etc. Right? And then when he finishes with the people, and he talks to them about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the last thing he tells them is a reminder that وَكَانَ وَعْدُ رَبِّي حَقًّا. My Lord's promise, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised, it will come to pass. Right? After explaining to them about, like I said, Allah, morality, right and wrong, accountability, the day of judgment, etc., what my Lord has promised will come to pass. So don't forget that. And then he goes on his way. The Quran doesn't say this, but we can just imagine he continued his travels. And this is the extent to which we know the story of Zulkarnain. This really incredible story. Another one of those stories that I wish somebody would spend the time and the energy and the research to make a movie out of, right? Would be really an incredible story, an incredible, a 4-part movie perhaps, right? The adventures of the two-horned king or something, I don't know. But I just, like I said, I wanted to narrate the story to you all, and then I wanted to pose a few critical questions that come up, and we'll conclude after that. So the first question, why is Zulkarnain even being mentioned? Does anybody remember the backstory? What was happening that caused the Prophet to need for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reveal something about Zulkarnain? Yes.
I think we read this story through Surah Al-Kahf every Friday. It gives you the justice, the king or the ruler, how to be just for the people, and he listened to the people, he coordinate with them, and work with them to build the country.
Absolutely. I think the story of justice, the element of justice is absolutely clear. The element of morality is clear here. But I think what I want to also know is, remember, there's something that happened in the Prophet's life that caused the revelation of Surah Al-Kahf. Right? Does anybody remember that? Remember that the Quraysh were trying to find a way. Right? Remember, when the Quran was being revealed, it was like something, it was poetic, it was powerful, it was moving, it was like something that was getting stuck in the head of the people of Quraysh. Right? Literally, the ayat, we don't understand them as well, so maybe we don't connect this way. But when you hear, I don't mean to compare the Quran to a song, but just for the example, you hear something that's very catchy, right? A jingle or something you hear is very catchy, and then you're just like working, and then all of a sudden it's like playing in your head. Does that ever happen to anybody? Right? For the Quraysh, who understood the Quran, who understood the poetry of the Quran, who spoke the language of the Quran was so annoying to them because it was stuck in their head, and they could not get rid of it. Every time they tried to get rid of the Prophet in one way or the other, more ayat would come, and it would just overwhelm them, and it was taking the community by storm, right? It was, even if you were not Muslim, it was the top of the charts, right? Everyone was citing and reciting and making mention of the words of Prophet Muhammad, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And so they devised this one particular strategy to get the Prophet to stop by going to some of the Bani Israel and asking them, give us some things that we can ask him that will stump him, that he won't have answers to, and so then he'll stop. He won't have anything else to say in his poetry, right? And so they came back with questions about the people in the cave. They came back with questions, about the one fifth. They came back with questions about Lut al-Layl, right? And the Prophet ﷺ, after a significant amount of time had passed, these ayat were revealed, and among them was the story of Lut al-Layl. But I think I want to go a little further. Why did Bani Israel say, ask him about Lut al-Layl? Why would they even say that? How did they know Lut al-Layl? What knowledge do they have? It's not in the Torah. It's not in the Jewish books, the Jewish Holy Scripture, the Old Testament. You won't find them there. You won't find them mentioned there, at least not at first glance. So this actually, the reason this is relevant, and the reason I wanted to ask this question, why did the Jews want to hear about Dhul Qarnayn from Rasulullah was not only to try to stump him, but because Dhul Qarnayn actually was a significant figure in the history of Bani Israel. And this reveals to us a little bit about who Dhul Qarnayn actually was. A lot of Muslims, they say, it's very popular and common. And it exists even amongst some of the early scholars of tafsir. It's a minority opinion, but they say that Dhul Qarnayn was Alexander the Great. And I think the majority of scholars today agree that he was definitely not Alexander the Great, because the historical record of Alexander the Great shows us that Alexander the Great was not the kind of character and individual who was worthy of this kind of mention. If for nothing else, we at least know historically that Alexander the Great was, he worshipped multiple gods and the pantheon and all this stuff, right? And somebody might respond and say, no, this is all made up about him. It's not true. Okay, we don't know. We can't verify for certainty, but this is what historians have found to be likely the case, and we should trust the attempts at verifying knowledge. Even if we cannot know with certainty because it's history, and we don't have all the evidence, but we have enough to know that. So, who was Dhul Qarnayn? Historically, likely he was a man, a king, a Persian king by the name of Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great was the Persian king who was known to have defeated the Babylonians in the east, and he was the Persian king who was known to have freed Bani Israel and allowed a large number of them to return back to their homelands. So you see why they might be significant. He might be significant to the Bani Israel, right? Why they might ask him. The Prophet would have no way of knowing this history, but Bani Israel would. This was important to them. And so it proves his prophethood when he shared these specific details about his story. And perhaps it is the case that the people that he traveled to in the east were somehow associated to the Babylonians, the ancient Babylonians, I should say. Question number two. Why are the first people mentioned in the Quran? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions 3 specific journeys of the Quran. So why the first one? These people who are living in this land and they are, some of them oppressing others. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this mention? Because this story reminds us and establishes a clear boundary between good and evil. And it establishes a sense of accountability to that good and evil. You can't just say, yes, I know there's good and evil, but it doesn't really matter. It does matter, because you will be held accountable to that good and evil. And it establishes for us morality, and it teaches us something about morality. Is morality something that you can just have, I just have it in my heart? I'm a good person in my heart, and that's enough. You can't do that, right? If you're not taking some action on your morality, then it's really not morality for you. It's just, some nice, fluffy idea that you like, that you feel good about, but you say that, it's immoral to do this, but then you do it, right? You say it's immoral to act in this way, but then you act in this way. Then you don't really believe that it's immoral. Otherwise, you wouldn't be acting in that way. No one just wakes up one day and says, I want to be evil today. I want to be an immoral person today. What immoral thing can I do? Right? People don't do that. They succumb to their desires. They succumb to their cravings. But they don't just wake up and say, what evil is out there waiting for me to commit? Right? So it establishes for us morality. What about story number 2? The second group of people, these people who have, maybe they're not even clothed, they're so primitive. Why is this story significant? This story becomes significant because it teaches us something more about morality. It teaches us, number one, that morality, if it is truly founded in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it should be universal. It should be able to be applied to any people in any place. Okay, but how can we apply morality to any? Look how different the second group of people were from the first. The first group of people were sophisticated enough that some of them are committing oppression against the others, right? It applies like warfare and weaponry and resources and territory, right? Isn't that all kind of get assumed in that? The second group of people are so primitive that they don't even have clothes, or barely any clothes, if they do, right? They're so primitive that the way that their houses are designed is not even protecting them from the sun. Yet morality should still be able to be shared. How can you share a morality? How can you share morality with people who are so different from each other? Number one, like I mentioned, if it is founded in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it is divinely inspired morality. Number two, actually sorry, let me just make a little extra comment on number one. If you look around all of the different moral possibilities in the world, all of the different options for morality that people have today, there's so many conflicts within those moralities, right? And you might have one moral system, right? Utilitarianism. You have this moral system, and if you apply it in this particular setting, it works great. And you're like, this is great. But then the moment you apply it to another setting, what happens? It falls apart. Right? Now you have moral dilemmas. Right? You might have the opposite. Right? You might have another moral system, and you apply it to the first one where utilitarianism was working great, and this other system falls apart. Right? So that's my point about morality. If it's going to be universal, it must be divinely inspired. It must be founded in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be the only one capable of delivering a morality that is so diverse, that is effective for such a diverse people. But number two, universal morality requires nuance. It requires you to be it must be capable of being applied in different circumstances, in different situations, in different ways. A rule that applies in this situation doesn't necessarily apply in this other situation. It has to be nuanced and sophisticated. And how can morality be nuanced or sophisticated? It is by being built upon principles. So the principles are there. For example, there's a principle that you should not take a life. Right? That murder is wrong. Okay, there's a moral principle. But in one situation, it applies by saying that that this person took somebody else's life, and so he must be punished. And now you're actually taking a life, right? So it has to be based on principles and not just based on certain rules, certain laws. And I think as Muslims, sometimes we forget this because we get caught up in the rules, and we forget to look at the usul behind those rules. What is the principles and the foundations that those rules are built upon, and how do we continue to apply those in all of the different circumstances? So, question number 4, the last group of people. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mention the last group of people? And at least, I don't think it's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us clues about the day of judgment. That's really not what you see in the ayats here. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is warning us about Ya'juj or Ma'juj. That's really not what's being taught in the ayat if you read them properly. That might be, one of the lessons, but not the significant one here. The story number 4, remember what happens. Right? He goes to these people, and he starts speaking to them, and they can't even communicate with each other. Does he just say, forget these people, I don't really understand them, I'll go somewhere else? No, he's patient. He waits. He hangs out with them. He learns their language. He puts effort in, right? He puts effort on his side. And then, when he finally understands their problem, what does he start doing? He gets busy trying to help them solve their problem. And he does it in a very unique way. He empowers them to solve their own problem. By empowering them to solve their own problem, some very important things are happening. Number one, they are empowered. They feel like they're not just a needy people, but that they can do something on their own. Right? They learn, right? And they learn so much by following his instructions, right? But something else also happens. When they feel empowered and they feel like they have been able to participate in the solution to their own problems with the guidance of a man like this, now they're also open to whatever other message you might have to share, and they can honestly think about it, right? Do you think that it would have worked if first he had gone to them and said, by the way, I'll help you, but you got to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first? Do you think that would have worked? Would it have sunk in? Maybe they would have said, yeah, sure, anything, just help us. Right? But that attitude of, yes, fine, we'll believe whatever you want us to believe, help us, is that really belief? No, right? And sometimes the opposite approach has to be taken. Sometimes you have to help people solve their problems, and when you help them, and they're at a state of peace and tranquility, and they can think clearly, then you can say, by the way, all of this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me tell you about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me share with you some of this morality that I've been sharing with other people as well. And then it can actually sink in, right? So this is the lesson of the third group of people, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions these third group of people who are struggling against Ya'juj and Ma'juj, and how he goes to wall with them, instructing them, teaching them, and then reminding them and sharing with them Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the morality that comes with that divine inspiration. The last thing I wanted to make comment on is فَأَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. This is the statement that comes again and again, right? I think it's a very interesting story to share with a group of Arabs who, most of them have very little resources. Most of them will never know what it's like to live like kings. And so for them, it must have been a really incredible and inspiring story, but it's a really powerful miracle of the Quran, in my opinion, that this particular story was selected and shared, and it's part of Surah Al-Kahf, which we recite every single Friday, or we should recite every single Friday, right? And suddenly, the lessons of Dhul-Qarnayn are actually very beautiful, because are there a group of people who live like kings today? I mean, at least like the kings of the past. I mean, look at us, guys. How many lights are on above us? And we feel like it's not enough, right? We gotta add more over here and over there. Right? Look at the vents, the AC system that cools us. And we get annoyed because the carpet isn't all the way to the wall. We're gonna fix it, inshallah. Right? We have, I mean, Allah forgive me. I have 3 pieces of technology on the table with me to help me in this, talk. Right? And another one on my wrist. I should feel ashamed all of a sudden. I promise you, I make good use of all of them, okay? That's all, it's not important that I'm doing it. But, this is the norm, right? This is the norm. And we have vehicles that, we don't even have animals. We have vehicles that replaced our animals, right? We travel so fast, right? My brothers and sisters, we have means. We are a people of means. The early Arabs, most of who heard this particular story, were not a people of means. But we are a people of means. We are a society in which the average person lives like the kings of the past. And the reason that is relevant, brothers and sisters, is because if we are a people of means, we have to take the means for what they actually should be used for. And remember, that's how we started. Means are not just for us to swing around in luxury, for us to throw around and show off, and buy bigger and bigger to show how big we can buy, and try to outdo each other, and how amazing my house is, and how amazing my car is, and how shiny my shoes are, right? I spent $1,000 on these Yeezys. Like, really? Is that the value? Is that the worth of your means? Is that the purpose of your means, or are your means available to you so that you can actually do something? So that you can actually help people who might benefit from your means, right? So ask yourself, what means do I have? And what kind of journey should I take? What kind of story should I write, like the stories of Dhul Qarnayn for myself and my life? What people can I help? Whose life can I change? Where can I bring morality? Where can I spread teachings of right and wrong and help people live better lives? Where can I do that using my means? Ask yourself this question, and inshallah, one day you will have written a story for yourself, like the story of Dhul Qarnayn. He's not some legendary king that we can never really, fully understand, but rather he's so relevant to us, right? He's so relevant to us, and a few less hours, watching Netflix or on PS5, and a few more spent, helping some people. A few less hours doing overtime at work, and a few more hours, serving some people who need food. That might be the difference between, our salvation or not. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to inspire us by the teachings of the story of the Qur'an. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to always remind us to learn the teachings of the Qur'an and internalize these lessons. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He would continue to bless us with means and would continue to bless us in the means that we have been given. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to inspire us to use what we have been given and what we have been blessed with to help and benefit others and to feel satisfied and to feel happy when we're able to help others. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He would continue to use us for good, to make us soldiers on His mission, and to bring us together, closer together as community members, and to gather us in His Jannah on after the day of judgment. Allahumma ameen. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. If you have any questions, inshallah, I'll take them, and then we can conclude. Yes?
You have mentioned that in the Old Testament, Torah, it is not mentioned Dhul Qarnayn, which is true. And the Jewish, they refer to Dhul Qarnayn, the king of Persia. The reason why you have mentioned, you have just went over it, and I have lived in Iraq and I studied this history of that area. There was 3 empires at that time: Persian Empire, Babylon Empire, and Roman Empire at the time. Now, Babylon Empire was occupying Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, all that area. The Jewish, they had problem. They always make problem. I'm sorry to say it, but this is a fact if you look at the history. And so Nebuchadnezzar, who is the king of Babylon, he went, he sent a soldier, brought them to Babylon, kept them under his hand, and and later on there was always clash between Babylon Empire and the other. So one year, the Persian king took over that area. So he sent the Jewish back to their. That's why the Jewish respect the king of Persia.
Right. Absolutely. Jazakallah khair for the additional points. And yeah, like you mentioned, Nebuchadnezzar was the one who arrested them and basically enslaved them and moved them from their homeland. But I do want to point out that you said that they were always making trouble, and I think in this situation, in many situations, that Israel was making trouble for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. Right? So, I think we should also appreciate that as well. That if you are a king or a kingdom in which you expect people to look at you as God, or you expect people to look at you as the son of the God or one of the gods, right? And then the small minority group of Bani Israel say, no, Allah is one, and we have prophets who come to us and teach us about Allah. Then yeah, the kings are going to get very upset and do bad things to you. And so we learn from that example. But you're right. The history is extensive. Actually, that's one of the reasons why Cyrus the Great is revered in Jewish history, and that's why I think modern Muslim historians and tafsir scholars connect Cyrus the Great to Dhul Qarnayn and not Alexander, who really wasn't great in any of our senses. So yes, are there any other questions, guys? People, anybody here from Syria? Okay. The city named after Alexander, I thought they might be offended. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair, brothers and sisters. We will, inshallah, continue next week. Next week, I think next Friday. What is? Is next Friday Big Friday?
Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah, so next Friday, we have this plan, by the way, every month. There's one Friday a month, it's always the fourth Friday. A month is like a big celebration. So next Friday will be Big Friday, we'll have dinner. I don't think we'll have like we might have a short khatara. The goal is just to sit together and eat together, inshallah, and enjoy each other's company. So next Friday will be Good Friday. We'll have like late night moves as well that Friday as well. And then inshallah the following Friday we'll have maybe a bit of talk. Perhaps the following one we'll have one of our upcoming game nights. Or actually no, because at that point Ramadan will start. And then after Ramadan we'll continue this schedule for Friday programs. Once again, Jazakallah khair for being here. I think next on the program, the young brothers, you guys can, so the young can go and hang out in the video